Welcome to Jesse Watters Primetime. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro, filling in for Jesse. Now, Joe Biden has a long history of lying to the American people, from plagiarizing his speeches when he ran for president to lying about the, quote, enormous success of the Afghanistan withdrawal. It's simply tough to trust anything Joe says. So we were all a little skeptical when his administration promised to bring transparency back to the White House.
His objective and his commitment is to bring transparency and truth back to government, to share the truth even when it's hard to hear.
Turns out that was just another lie. Because after Secret Service found a bag of cocaine in the White House, the Biden administration has been anything but transparent. We can't even get a straight answer out of them about where the coke was found. Now, originally, when the hazmat team swept through the White House, they said the coke was in the library.
We have a yellow bar stating cocaine, hydrochloride, and that's found in the library.
But days later, the president's team would contradict that recording, with Karine Jean-Pierre telling us the cocaine was found in a locker on the opposite side of the White House.
Where this was discovered is a heavily traveled area where many White House, West Wing, I should be even more specific, West Wing visitors come through this particular area. I just don't have anything more to share.
And now today, we're hearing something completely different, with MSNBC, even them turning up the heat.
Now the investigation has progressed, and so they're saying the West Executive entrance, which, as you noted, is closer to the Situation Room. It is also next to West Executive Drive. That's where, for example, the Vice President's vehicle is parked.
So this entrance isn't accessible to everyday people. It seems like you need to be someone pretty special to be where these drugs were found. Near the Situation Room, that's where they hold all the National Security Council meetings. Heads of the DOD, CIA, DOJ all come in and out of there. So why is none of this adding up? The White House is already trying to slow walk the idea of a potential prosecution.
If the Secret Service determines who brought the cocaine into the White House, does the White House support the prosecution of this individual?
I'm just not going to get into hypotheticals from here.
What are they trying to hide? Why so secretive? Primetime has filed a FOIA request with the White House asking for the visitor logs and surveillance tapes from the White House. If they're not interested in getting to the bottom of this, we will. Because without answers, people are going to immediately think Hunter is behind this. Now, come on. We know Hunter has a long history as a drug addict. Could this coke be his? And a major condition of his plea deal was keeping his nose clean and staying away from drugs. So, is the White House trying to shield Hunter? We know the Secret Service has a history of protecting him from trouble.
One of the things that Hunter Biden pled guilty on was illegal possession of a firearm. We have reports that the Secret Service went and tried to talk to the firearms dealer to find out who he had notified, and we're snooping around with that. That's concerning, Jason, because at that particular time, Joe Biden didn't have Secret Service protection.
And if Hunter gets one strike during his plea deal, it could be game over for him. So is the Secret Service sticking their neck out to protect Hunter? And will Joe finally give us a straight answer?
everybody.
Stephen Miller is the founder of America First Legal, a brilliant mind, a good friend. Stephen, it's great to see you again. I got to tell you, Stephen, I just have to talk for 3 seconds first. The idea that she says she's not going to get into hypotheticals when they say, is there a potential prosecution here? What are you talking about? It's an illegal drug in the White House. And that's not hypothetical. That's real. Okay, so let's talk about the location. The hazmat team, they call, it's audio tape that it's in the library. I've been in the library. The library that I've been in is in the East Wing, where the residence is. Am I right or wrong, Stephen?
The library is they're either talking about in the East Wing or they're talking about in the president's residence itself. Either way, that would be in the inner sanctum, far away from the reaches of everyday, even senior staff.
Okay, so the quote on the day that it happened by the person, the hazmat team who identifies it preliminarily as cocaine, is it's in the library, which is the inner sanctum. And then all of a sudden we're told, oh, it's where all the people come in. Now, let's talk about where Karine Jean-Pierre said it's found. Can you describe that area for us, Stephen?
So the original area they appear to be referring to would be what is sometimes colloquially known as the Marine entrance, where you see the two Marine guards standing there.
Right.
And that's where dignitaries come through, and that's where escorted guests come through, and then there's a waiting area. But that's still a very highly controlled area. That's an escort-only area. You've been through extensive screening to be anywhere close to that area. So it's not just that you're going through a mag and getting wanted. You've been pre-cleared and pre-screened, and somebody knows exactly who you are and everything about you. We have an extensive history on you by the time you've reached that location.
And in addition to that, Stephen, are there not security cameras identifying everyone who's coming in and watching people?
I would just put it this way. Nobody is going into the West Wing of the White House without a million eyes being on you. This is one of the most secure facilities in the face of the earth. You are only steps away from the Oval Office. You're only steps away from the Situation Room. You're only steps away from the offices of the National Security Advisor and many other of the highest ranking officers in the U.S. government.
Okay, so what is your take on all of this, Stephen?
Well, the most interesting development that was added to this today, which you played in the intro, some of the new sound that you played, is that now they're saying it is the West Executive entrance where the Vice President parks their car. Now, I know exactly where that entrance is. I walked through that entrance thousands and thousands of times. That's an even more specialized entrance than the entrance for foreign dignitaries. That's the entrance that is right. It's the doorstep to the White House Situation Room. In fact, staffers who work in the Eisenhower building, staffers, including senior staffers who work in the Eisenhower building, unless they have the right badge, are not even allowed to step through that doorway without an escort. That is how highly controlled that door is, even to staffers who work for the president. So there's a set of lockers there that you would put your phone in if you're going to be entering into or going towards a space where there are counter-espionage measures in place. So if they're saying, which is story number 3, that there was cocaine placed in one of the phone lockers that is a preliminary step to deter espionage, you're talking about a security breach really at the highest levels of government that would almost certainly be, based on this current version of the story, who knows if it changes again, would either be a very high-ranking official in the government or somebody who is attending a meeting involving very high-ranking officials, one of those two cases. A tourist who's being escorted in because they're, say, friends with the domestic policy advisor is going to have a lot of eyes on them, eyes from the Secret Service, eyes from the people escorting them. They're not just going to take a white baggie out of their pocket, walk up to a locker, drop it in, turn the key, take the key, and keep on walking. There's going to be so many eyes on them. The people who are coming and going without that level of notice are going to be people who are passing through that entrance on a regular basis.
Okay. All right. Stephen Miller, thank you so much for being with us and explaining all that. I'm glad you did. All right. And Brett Tolman is a former federal prosecutor and Right on Crime executive editor. All right, Brett. This guy, Hunter Biden, right now is awaiting the approval of a plea bargain that has been arranged. I understand the date for the plea is scheduled, I think it's July 26th. Now, we have two steps. One, will the judge accept this plea bargain of 2 misdemeanors and not even an arraignment on the gun charge, but some kind of a program? And number two, how can this impact that, if at all?
Judge, thanks for having me on. These are incredible times to be discovering that there may be cocaine in unreal location. I've been to that location multiple times, and Stephen was very accurate. It is very limited who can be in that area. So let's say that Hunter Biden, going into his plea agreement, all attention is on that judge, and there's mounting pressure on the judge because so many of us have been, very loudly proclaiming the absurdity of this plea deal. DOJ never gives diversions. I looked at 189,000 different gun violation cases. Not one got a diversion.
Let me interrupt you there, Brett, for 1 second. Don't you get into a diversion program if you've got some kind of problem that you're dealing with? I mean, what are they diverting him for?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense because the requirements that they're putting on him are that he's not supposed to do drugs and he's not supposed to possess a firearm. Well, that's easy enough. Just give him a felony and let him suffer the consequences like everybody else for his felonious, activities. But this bag of cocaine, if it has any connection whatsoever to Hunter, it is a game changer. The federal drug laws are very tough, even on small amounts. 5 grams of a cocaine base can get you a mandatory minimum 5 years in federal prison.
That's right.
It will all depend on what the prosecutors want to do, but this is a very treacherous territory for Hunter Biden.
Well, doesn't the fact, Brett Tolman, that Karine Jean-Pierre wouldn't even speculate on whether or not someone would be a potential prosecution, and her talking about how difficult it might be, and there was no outrage, there was no anger. Do you get the sense that this administration would rather this thing just go away? It doesn't sound like we're going to get who did this. We should be the safest place, in the country.
Exactly. Judge, this isn't the same as Willie Nelson smoking a joint on the top of the White House with President Carter. This is, cocaine. It's a Schedule II narcotic, stiff penalties for its distribution, and it's currently ravaging our streets.
Okay.
So I would hope they're taking it more serious than what we've seen.
Certainly. Well, Brett Tolman, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.